All right, welcome back to True Story with John Gibson. Today, joining us, we have Rohan Patel. Rohan is a successful telecommunications executive, BJJ Purple Belt and World Champion, IBJJF World Champion, and a buddy of mine. So, Rohan, thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me, brother.
Yeah, of course. Hey, my pleasure. I have a list of BJJ questions and just overall arching kind of life questions that I have not been able to pick your brain on because we're always training. So this is really all my pleasure, to be honest with you.
Oh, dude, you're so humble, man. I've learned so much from you over the years, so it's really cool that we get to do this.
Man, thank you for that. I appreciate it. Believe me, we learn from each other, and we'll totally, hopefully, touch on some of that stuff too. I just think it for kind of the benefit, really, again, for my own curiosity, but hopefully some folks listening too. I want to give you an opportunity as well, but tell me a little bit about, again, this is like a huge facet of your life I never really see. So I'm so curious, tell me a little bit about not so much a day in the life, but business from an executive, a professional perspective. You have a real job, you're successful. What does that look like? And maybe the second part of that question is, COVID disrupted everybody's life, but in your industry, telecommunications, I imagine you had probably, a litany of change. So I would just love to learn a little bit about that, pick your brain, get your insight.
Yeah, man. So I've been working with a company called GTT, Global Telecom Tech, for about 2 years. It was a first real job out of college. And I literally think of them as my jiu-jitsu sponsor for they let me integrate my life with them and training all the time. But the pandemic was a huge adjustment. My customers before it were all in retail, and I suffered for a few months where they were all just disconnecting because stores were shutting down. And so it really challenged me to find a new niche, figure out where customers are still going to need service and what industries those are in, and how I could break into them. So for me, those industries were trading and hospitals. So over the course of the past year, I've pretty much switched out my entire book of business to mainly trading companies and healthcare providers, because those are the organizations and institutions that are still going strong right now. People still got to move money around, and obviously people need healthcare right now.
Yeah, of course. So, and again, so conversely, again, we don't talk about this a lot, but I work full-time in healthcare and revenue cycle management. Right. Yeah, and consulting to hospitals for really financial, their revenue cycles. So I understand that very much so. And I can appreciate their needs have certainly increased. Technology bubble, I think, in healthcare, they're very slow to adjust. I think the curve, 10 years or more maybe. And I've seen in the last, I don't know, 12, 16, 18 months, it's been really sped up. And good, I guess, sometimes, things like this breed innovation. So I guess that's good,
Yeah, for sure. Silver lining, no doubt.
Yeah, absolutely. Man, I appreciate you sharing some of that. Switching gears a little bit, because I mentioned it a little bit in the intro, but where do you find the balance? So, I mean, for those aren't aware or aren't, avid jiu-jitsu fans like you and I are and super passionate about it. You're a world champion. You're very, very accomplished. You still compete at the highest levels. And even last year during the pandemic, the few opportunities there were to compete, you were still an active competitor and you had a very successful year. So I'll say all that for you. And but I say all that to say this, the balance, right? Returning back to balance. How do you balance that with your career?
Man, jiu-jitsu is my career. Jiu-jitsu is the way that I make money. And I feel like that mindset is super important, because just like any corporation, and I love GTT and they've done a lot for me, but just like any corporation, they're trying to get the most from you that they possibly can.
Sure.
And you have to look at it inversely. It's I have to get the most out of them. And in the middle there, it's a beautiful symbiotic relationship. So I feel like trying to always stay in the balance and never put too much weight into what other people are telling you, that what they need from you. Always being reflective, realizing what is the best thing for Rohan, but also what's the best thing for my GTT team, and what does my academy, what does my teammates need right here in the department. And everything kind of gets factored together. And there's a point where one weighs more than the other. You know, it's kind of like, I mean, you're a dad, right? You're in a family, like you have a responsibility to everybody. And as I kind of feel that same way, like obviously not to the same degree, but it's just, you're just juggling all the time. What's the most important project on your plate and delivering on it.
Where do you feel like you learned that? Was that something like in the Patel household? Were your parents?
For sure.
Okay.
Yeah, that's Minish Patel.
Okay. It's interesting because I've met your brother just once in crossing while training and stuff, and he's also really successful, right? Attorney, doctor, something.
Yeah, he was in iBanking. He worked for Goldman Sachs for a couple of years at college, and then now he's transitioned into private equity with Citadel. So.
Amazing. Yeah, amazing. Okay, so that makes sense. So the bar was like the expectation was maybe pretty high at home. I get it. Yeah. That's great. So, you know, I guess maybe to that end, growing up, I know we've talked about you did have other sports, right? You had baseball. Was that an earlier passion? And if so, what made the transition to jiu-jitsu?
That's actually that's one of my favorite questions to answer. So baseball is a nutrition. We all know this. Anyone that's watched the game for a long time. And I was a pitcher. And that 1v1 battle between the pitcher and the hitter, I actually relate that so much to like the battle of the guard passer to the guard player.
Wow.
You know, with the guard passer being the pitcher, so ironically, which was me. But I love that like one-on-one battle within the game, and also realizing that there's so many different ways to get a guy out, just like so many different ways to win a match. And once I saw those parallels, I think it made like jiu-jitsu is, we call it a fight, right? But it's a game, you know, like it's not MMA. And I'm a gamesman. I like to find all the different ways that you could go into a situation and come out, you know, victorious. So within that context of the pitcher and the batter, it just made so much sense as I transitioned my later years. It's always thinking about the guard passer and the guard player.
That's awesome. And it's actually a fascinating insight to your game. Like, I appreciate that, because having, and I'll provide some context around that. I've never competed with Rohan, and I would never pretend to even allude to compete with Rohan.
I would bow out the second that we made it to the final. That's pure metal all day.
No, hey, yeah, well, that's a great fantasy and scenario, to dream about maybe, but I think I'm a realist and I'm practical. But I'll say this, you know, your game it's certainly complex. It's nuanced, but you're really good at what you do, and you're a specialist in my opinion, but you're not limited. I don't want to say you're limited to like a specialty. So I think that differentiation should be made, but it's so interesting to see you draw the parallels to baseball, because I never played baseball. So as I hear you describe it that way, and especially from a pitching perspective, I can identify with the one-on-one battle from maybe wrestling and some of those previous experiences, but I never thought about the complexity of the different pitches, or this side, inside, outside, to beat that person. And man, does that make sense to your game? I get it. I totally get it. I'll say this too. So I met Rohan, I think the first time I met him, he was teaching a class at my academy at Chicago BJJ. It was a no-gi class, and I was I just won my first tap cancer out submission grappling event, and I was raising money for my second one. So I was training a lot of no-gi, and I was in there, and this guy just put us through the ringer. It was like a 7 a.m. class or something. 7 of us. I'm for sure the oldest guy in the class. And by the end of it, he was like, "No, get up, you got it." And, you know, ego, all the horror, whatever. So I got it, and I plowed through the class, and I was so appreciative afterwards that this guy had kind of pushed me, you know, because it was good feeling out. You get that satisfaction and whatever afterwards, and sort of these endorphins are going. And a week later, pandemic, boom, gym shut down.
Man, crazy how fast everything just.
Man. And so I reached out to him, and I knew he had some mats. I reached out to a couple of friends of mine, but I said, I knew I could learn from him. He was a world champion. He had mats. So it was a nature necessity sort of a thing. And we just hit it off. And I really appreciate it, kind of the one-on-one hands-on coaching that he provides. So if nothing else right now, if you guys are looking in the Chicago area for some privates, it's a great coach to talk to, someone you should reach out to. But over that, you really get to know somebody through jiu-jitsu. And I feel like you learn a lot about their character. And maybe more so for you, again, we haven't competed in a competitive perspective. So anyway.
Yeah, but you try to kill me every time we train.
Yeah, right. So exactly. You know me better than I would ever know you to that regard. But that's that's probably a fair question to say, like, not to put you on the spot, but maybe what is your assessment of my game? I think, like, I'm sure there's people that would love to know, and Rohan will be fair. He's not going to pull punches.
Yeah. So John has a great base on top. Like, he's like super hard to move. And that's why, like, I always resort to trying to trick him into getting into fall into the region that, he doesn't have a posting hand or a posting leg. John's actually really good at the things that he does too. His wrestling pedigree leads him to me never wanting to be on the feet with him. I always would rather playing guard and put him in a world that he doesn't have the same level of skill as I do. But when we're on the feet and he's clubbing me with his hands, like, and I'm getting tossed around every which way, that's a rough day for me.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate that. And conversely, the second we get to the ground, which is jiu-jitsu, I'm drowning. so that's how that shakes out. But again, it's just been awesome. It's been such a pleasure to train with you. And tell us a little bit about your academy and like how that's developing, coaching, and just everything around that you care to share.
Sure. So I'm the general manager of Taylor BJJ Jiu-Jitsu. Taylor BJJ is a friend of mine of many years, almost a decade now. Wow. Met Taylor on the competition scene. She was always like the best girl around Chicago, like one of the best. And I was just like always really like impressed by her game and composure and just like how she carried herself within the scene. Like, that's like, you don't see a lot of people with finesse on that high level where they care much about their like technical attributes, but then they're also very business and like savvy when it comes to managing their relationships and trying to figure out like what their next move in jiu-jitsu is. So she was teaching at the UFC gym and I was like helping her cover a couple classes here and there. And the pandemic hit and her gym in River North got shut down. And then that's right around the time that we matted out my entire apartment, started having, a little pro training session here for all of like the notable brown and black belts in Chicago. Not to say that anyone that doesn't come isn't notable. It's really just, it's really just a ton of kids that like to still train hard, and we don't like anyone telling us what to do. So we came together from all these different teams, and now every day, twice a day, we have an hour of hard sparring in the morning and at night. And that is how House of Dogs formed, which is kind of like our subset of the team, the coming together of all these different teams. And then a couple months into doing that, I was like, Taylor, let's just start teaching class here. We joke all the time. Taylor plans like perfectly. She's really good at laying battle plans, and I'm the trigger man. I pull the trigger and just make it happen. Yeah. So with the two of us together, we've been able to cultivate a pretty cool thing. Now we have like COVID-friendly classes where we have 8 students on the mat every session. And like our roster is about 20 students right now. And we're looking to move into a real space in the coming months. I think summer is our goal right now.
That's great. That's so great. And it's such an amazing perspective because I've been able to see this kind of from its infancy a little on the peripheral. And I had a recent neck injury, which removed me from training for about 4 months. And every day I was monitoring that pro training session on Instagram and watching you guys and cheering every one of you along, especially as you prepared for competitions last year. And it really was so motivating to me, man. When you wanted to be a part of it so bad. And it was just so, any athlete last year in any sport, we all went through loss. We lost academies, we lost training, we lost time, we lost friendships, relationships. We all experienced an abrupt amount of loss. So, and it was like, we all could, it brings out, it's loss, right? It's going to bring out the best.
That loss of time is like, it's such a real thing. Like for both of us, man, like we're at different in our life, but every year that you're in jiu-jitsu, that you get to do jiu-jitsu to like the full extent of your body is such a blessing, you know, not even sentimental about it, but like,
Yes.
like, dude, I'm 26. Like the guys that are winning world titles are like 22, 23. Like I already feel old.
That's crazy.
And I just don't, and like, but I just, how could I say that to you? Right.
No. I understand
You know
because
what I mean,
I
though?
lived it, but also like, wow. And not because I'm judging you now, because I just hadn't considered you might be right. You know, I just didn't realize, you know, I don't know though. There's hope. There's guys like Cyborg, Lovato. There's some guys
For
hanging
sure.
out there still really doing
sure.
it. And I think that but you're right though. This is look, the end game of this sport is to make someone yell uncle, right? We're tweaking it, we're putting them to sleep or tweaking a joint until they say give. So there's only so much a body can sustain. And even with great technique and training, it's we call it a fight. I struggle with that parallel. I've woken up on a Monday and said it's a fight, and I've woken up on a Tuesday and like it's just BJJ.
Yeah.
I struggle with that because especially competing submission only, because I'm like, I have all the feelings and I want to puke like it's a fight. Like, you know, I've been heel hooked. That was awful. But in a BJJ or, you know, maybe a more formal IBJJF, no, not so much. It's a match. You can be very strategic.
Yeah. But hey, if whoever of the two guys that's fighting, if one guy says, oh, this is just a BJJ match, and the other guy says this is a fight, my money's on that guy.
Turns into a fight, right?
Yeah. For sure.
Yeah,
but also on that same token, the guy that can control his emotions and not make irrational decisions, even as the intensity ramps up, that's me. Like that's the guy that's gonna win. You know, like
yes.
Because like there's game plan in place, and deviation from that plan is necessary sometimes to change. But when you start changing things beyond the scope of the variables that are in play, that's when like you're no longer executing any kind of plan or any set strategy. Now you are literally scrapping, and you might win, but you just rolled the dice. You took what could have been a very easy victory, what could have been like a guarantee to the next round, you know, and you forfeited that for what I think sometimes is our own ego. I tell my students that like there's a way to win a match where you get to display beautiful jiu-jitsu and you get to mitigate your risk.
Yeah.
And like I think there is a balance, just like with anything, between being the best athlete and performing your best and not being careless and taking the amount of risk that's going to lose the match for you. And you know,
yeah,
I joke about this, but it's like in the end, your job is to make it to the next round.
Yeah.
That's why you showed up that day. Your job is to get the sickest submission of the day. Your job is not to have Flow Grappling write something about you. All of that shit is a byproduct.
Yeah.
It's really about getting to the next round.
Yeah, you're so right. And so where do you think, like, when do you think you learned that? I mean, now you're a very active competitor. So is it the repetition of competing, or was that an early influence from a coach or something?
That was like watching the best guys out there, man. Like watch how like Lepre and Leandro Lowe like fight the best in the world. And of course, like I'm not fighting, like I'm fighting high level guys that, you know, blue and purple and eventually brown, but like I haven't fought like outside of training. I haven't fought like, you know, Kennedy Marcel or Mateus Gabriel, like the very best at black belt featherweight right now.
But you've choked out the best at purple belt last year. So, I mean, give yourself a little more credit. And you made the highlight reel on Flow, and it's all out there. I mean, you've achieved those great things. So don't
Thanks, brother.
You know,
thank you.
Yeah, don't undercut yourself.
For sure. I'm not, but there's also, the ocean is so deep. Like, it's so easy to get disillusioned by your victories.
Yeah, fair.
And let them like make you feel like you're something that you're not. And there's always days that we really get to live up to that shiny example that we have of ourselves in our mind. You know, those days are seldom, and we can't take those small victories and then let them, you know, influence. They can inspire us, you know, that's possible. Correct. You know, but in the end, you're still that same shithead kid that couldn't put two victories together at the big tournaments a couple of years.
Right.
And like I always try to like remind myself of like that blue belt work ethic before it came together, because of the 8 years I've been training, you know, like I wasn't winning for 5 of them, you know, like it was in the later years that like I caught a stride, and then I just really locked in, and I've been trying to hold on to that stride ever since. And it's shaky. Like there's, especially with the pandemic. Oh my God.
Yeah. You know, isn't it ironic? And you touched on something that just, man, resonated right here. Isn't it ironic that out of 8 years, 5 you weren't winning, right? Now, perception is Rohan had this meteoric rise and collected 60 medals from me on the outside. And it was like world champ, boom, 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 boom. Got to train with that guy, all these things. You were just, you lost for 5 years before that, you know? And I mean, that's anybody's success story in any facet. People will, and this isn't about me, but people ask me like, how do you do all these things? How do you do all these things? It's like, I work hard, you know, I work hard. I stay every day. And it's not those moments of a small victory or something are, to your point, so fleeting, and it's shaky. You got to wake up the next day and do it again. Right? So how do you motivate yourself to keep that perspective of that blue belt work mentality, you know?
Oh man, dude, it was so easy to lose. Like I want to tell you how I kept it, but like it's so to tell you the story of how it just like slips away. Like because when I started work, like eventually I didn't want to. I was washing windows and doing Uber Eats, and that was enough to sustain my life in my little, you know, $600 room that I rented, and the barely any utilities that I had to pay. So like I had the privilege of no student debt, and I didn't have to like, you know, take on a big like job at that point. I could just focus on how much money do I need to compete and train. But then eventually there's like, you know, like I am Indian, like I did have a college degree, and I wanted to like make my parents proud, of course. So like I went to get like a corporate job that would get them off my back. But also I realized that like, wow, it's comfortable to have a little bit more money than is absolutely necessary. And it was kind of nice. So for maybe a year, I was like enjoying like probably like my second year of purple belt, I was like enjoying the nicer things, like, you know, going to get drinks after work with friends, you know, training in the day and maybe catching a couple lifts throughout the week. And I felt myself fading. I felt like the fire inside of me dying really quick. I didn't know how to get out of it. Like, because I found like I was happy. Like I enjoyed like getting drinks with girls and just like having that normal life that a 24, 25-year-old would. But it wasn't until the pandemic hit and I had done like a year in corporate America, and I was always telling myself, I want to get back to like that like 2016 row, that, you know, rip the lift in the morning, hit the training at noon, and then spar again at 7, and do that every day, regardless of how my body felt, and being on top of nutrition, you know, not drinking, like not letting vices of the world, you know, influence like what's going on inside my own heart. It honestly took a global pandemic to get me back to what I am now. So like that's my silver lining on it, is that without having to go to the office every day, without having to answer face to a manager, I got to take control of my training again. And then once I was back to training that same capacity, I was like, this is awesome. It feels so good here. And then to do it with all of the same friends that I had in 2016.
Yeah.
Those are now like brown and black belts, opening academies. It was surreal. And like the community of like the 15 of us that came together for it, and just like that accountability, and like, especially like, you know, to Taylor, like when it comes to like running the school and being on top of our shit there, and to Molinaro, who's like one of my other training partners, who is like a general in here, like will literally make us train every fucking day without any remorse. So,
it's so weird. He's the Rohan of your group. That's crazy.
Kind of, yeah.
That's amazing.
I don't think he would appreciate that title.
Oh, no. Well, we won't tell him. He'll never hear.
We won't tell
He's
him.
going to be on this in a week, by the way. But
yeah. Oh, sweet.
No, well, no, to that end too. And I appreciate you saying all that, because I feel like Chicago has such, you know, pandemic notwithstanding, has such a thriving BJJ community. And it irks me that no one talks about it. You hear San Diego, you hear New York, you hear parts of Florida. We have some of the best competitors in the world here. They just may not be all Brazilian, I feel like. And
maybe we're all on the come up. Like,
man, we have some.
We've had a couple good years. We're gonna string it together. But
yeah,
it's when we put Chicago on the map, it's gonna be there to stay. And this is all just grassroots movement coming together. And it is frustrating sometimes. No one ever mentions Chicago. Like, no one realizes how hard we train in the Midwest.
Oh,
like,
man,
the wrestling pedigree that's here that transitions into jiu-jitsu. Like, man, as soon as those wrestlers learn some guard passing footwork, like that's everybody on their back.
Yeah. It's a long day. Yeah, it's a long day. And but and I'll say, from someone who came from a wrestling background, I thought, and we've talked about this before, but I thought that would carry me a lot further. I watched the UFC and always a good wrestler and all these things, and MMA, BJJ and BJJ are two different things, but I thought it would carry me a lot further than it did. And I learned that lesson the hard way. And I'm glad I learned that lesson, because I fell in love with BJJ because of it. But one thing I'll say again, a testament to the Chicago BJJ scene, is we have technical teachers. We have that'll shut your wrestling stuff down quick. We have beautiful technical. They'll throw a De La Hiva, and not to get too technical, or they'll go single leg X on you, and it's like, anyway. So I just, and some amazing coaches too. So, and you're a part of that. It's been amazing to train besides and with some of your white belts, and then go see them perform at tournaments. And I don't want to name any names and not name any names, but you have some amazing accomplished students already. And again, maybe a testament to Taylor too. I don't want to neglect her.
For sure, man.
And her coaching, of course.
It's mostly all Taylor on the coaching side, man.
Her programs are so technical. I wish I had a better word, right?
Yeah, she puts a lot of time into organizing how she introduces the material, and then we both structure a lot of the positions that we teach into so it makes it's easy to retain, applying it right away. And we kind of we do a lot of positional sparring, but it's always positional sparring for the person that's doing the technique that we just showed. We try to limit the reactions of the top person just so live, but it's not we're not just going live right now. It's a live situation within a context. So say the guard player from closed guard, he is looking at a certain few reactions when he has both of his opponent's arms across his body, block. And we fight from there, dealing with the posture, dealing with them, and so on. So
I love it. Yeah, it's fantastic. What's next, maybe? I mean, you talked about what's next as far as what you foresee for opening an academy, hopefully by summer. But for you personally, from a competitive perspective, do you...
Dallas Open, baby. March 7th.
Okay.
For sure.
So that's
like
soon.
mini worlds.
Yeah,
it's going to come really quick. And I'm a little heavy right now. So I gotta get my weight back down.
You'll get there. Yeah,
it'll be no problem. But it's crazy because I look at the divisions and it's like a little mini worlds.
Well, that's us. Yeah,
there hasn't been any competitions.
Everybody's really itching. Dallas for sure, but also Austin. They have just been going full blast with BJJ. A lot of the fight to wins, right?
I love Texas.
Yeah, Texas, man, go for it, and freedom, and so with that though, you had a really good year last year, and you got press, right? And that's a good thing.
Dude, you know what's crazy? I didn't have a good year. I ended the year well. That's all anyone remembers.
It's true. You ended it really well, and with a big kind of exclamation point. But I'll say, even from watching you, you competed, and that means something. And you went to the big ones, so I still feel like that means something.
Thanks, man.
It was hard last year, and you're not in, man. Purple belt's sharks. Purple belt's a new black belt. It just is. From a blue belt's perspective, that gets beat up by purple belts all the time. So what next is Dallas Open. Okay, great. You got to lose some weight. All right. That's exciting, man. It's really exciting. Are you bringing any students to that, or just you and some of your,
the registration closed immediately. Molly texted me and was like, hey, register right now. And then the very next day it was shut. So I think it's just going to be me and him because of how fast it filled up, how much everyone was itching to compete.
Yeah. Man, I can't wait to watch it. Let me ask this real quick before we kind of transition toward the end, and I'll let you get some coffee and kind of wake up a little bit more. But how do you recover? I mean, you are an animal, and I trained myself into the ground in the 20s. I broke my back. I broke my back again. I rehabbed. Then I found jiu-jitsu, and you know, I've had some. Anyway, recovery has always become more and more increasingly important for me. And I see you redlining, and I'm not jinxing you in any way. I just want to learn from you, truly. So what do you do? Do you have any secrets or?
Yeah, I think I've figured out like because it's not always just time resting. You know, I'm not gonna say the obvious thing, but like you need to always have a high protein count. You need to eat a lot of in your diet. Everyone knows that. Mm-hmm. I think mentally what gets really taxing is like when there's always people around, when you never, for me, like I'm an extrovert, but like I really get to like recover when I'm like fully alone with just my puppies, you know, like where like I can just like come back to life and like journal and reflect and just be my own human. I really underestimated it for so long. Like honestly, like, I never had like as cool a group of friends as I have now. Like around, my parents joke with me, they're like, you have an entourage with you all the time, and I'm like, no, like those are just my training partners, you know. Like I was kind of like a little like lonely musical kid when I was younger, and I was just like be in my room playing guitar, and kind of getting back to that a little bit. It's just picking Elliott Smith songs that I really want to learn, and just allocating that time for, you know, just sitting around with Ella and Scotty and letting myself have that without feeling any need to, you know, entertain or take responsibilities. And dude, the lower belts are a single man's game. Like it's really hard. It's really hard to have like committed relationships and put yourself in, you know, these situations with beautiful women, but like they want more from you. And like the thing about you is that it requires all of you. Like it, and like everything does.
At your level, yeah.
If you want to do it well. Yeah, if you want to do it well, like you have to give like a part of your soul to it. And I think you're realizing that. And because I used to joke with myself and say like, I want to win it all. I want the girl, I want the money, I want, you know, the nice place, I want all the friends. And but you know, like that's not realistic for someone that is trying to, you know, make their way in one because I know how I need to recover now. It's usually like it's private time, it's alone, it's reflective. And when I give myself that, I feel way better. And I feel like I'm a better friend, I'm a better teammate, I'm a better business partner when I let myself reset like that. So,
so how do you, no, that's a great answer to this. And that's a great answer to the question. How do you maybe communicate that to the people like closely around you that like, hey, in order for me to be like the best me, I need some like alone time here. Like, you know,
dude. Yeah, doors are great. Shut doors, locked doors are awesome.
Yeah.
Like very like being able to ask for the things, like this is what sales taught me. Being able to ask for what you need without feeling any shame about it.
Sure.
You know, like you won't get anything unless you won't ask. And if people think that everything is totally kosher, it's a status quo, then that's that. And I'm sure everyone going through the pandemic like was just like, and who was quarantining at home was probably just, oh my God, I'm going crazy here with my family constantly.
Yeah.
And like definitely like we have a herd here all freaking day.
Yeah.
So just like setting parameters, like, you know, it's like, hey guys, I know you want to drill at 9 a.m., but no one's coming into my house until 11.
Yeah, no, it's good to set those boundaries. And I honestly, I completely understand why you would have to have that. And again, to your point, for those who totally aren't aware, you know, his dojo, they're coming into his home. So this division of work and home for him is, you know, is even less, you know, so that on top of a pandemic.
Non-existent.
It's non-existent, right? Yeah, exactly. So yeah, those lines don't blur, they just don't exist. So yeah, I can really appreciate that answer. And I agree, it's important. And you also said something I say all the time. And I don't even know where I heard it, but maybe sales training, but you have
sales training. Yeah.
You have not because you ask not. And once I heard that saying, I was like, man, I feel way better. Like it took the guilt out of it. You know, all I can do is try, you know? And that works all the time. Like,
that's what they're paying us for. That's why we're in sales, John, because like they want, it's people get so uncomfortable asking for the things that they truthfully need.
Yeah.
Their
I
organization.
agree.
And like, if that's a skill that like you and I were able to like get past those first layers of communication and make someone realize why we need them, but for them in a very plain and sincere way that makes them say yes.
Yeah, exactly. And it takes, you're absolutely right. At the end of the day, we have to deliver something tangible to our boss, right? Let's say it's a signature on a contract. Okay.
Yeah.
I have to have the courage to ask. I have to have and you can take someone to all the dinners. You can have a sales cycle for a year, and you can be best friend and never actually ask. And guess what? They'll never give it to you. Right. So you got to ask. So yeah, I love that. Great correlation here. I wanted to ask you one more question too. Who are some of your mentors? And this doesn't have to necessarily be exclusive to BJJ, just in general, like just some of your influences. Just, do you have any good books you've read? Is it your parents, anybody?
Yeah. So I read The Artist's Way. As far as books, The Artist's Way was something I picked up thanks to Mr. Schuler, John Schuler. He was a teacher in high school.
Okay.
And it was a really cool way to get me journaling. It was like the first book that told me about the creative process and how it is something to be like respected. And like at that point, I wasn't like a religious kid or anything, but like I took to like that creative process kind of like it was a religion, because there were daily exercises and kind of prayers that would better facilitate a creative mind. And part of that was like more like journaling in the morning, finding like time that's just for yourself, and realizing the power that you can unlock from just going within yourself. I think the author was Christine. I want to look it up for you.
Sure.
Julia Cameron. Yeah, that was like the biggest piece of that book meant a lot to me. And as far as influences, like I think my training partners for sure. Like Taylor teases me about this a lot. Like I get so emotional about like the people that like I train with when it comes
to
like, there's no way to not like I see what we go through every day, and I know what it means like when it all comes together. And so like those moments of togetherness, and like I think that's like the thing that pushes me the most. Is like, and they're not like, let's go to Disney World type of moments, but like you just like you see those expressions on your training partner's faces, like when their hand gets raised, or like right when the time runs out and they're waiting by that advantage. Like, such a relief. And it's just such honest work. And yeah. But I do want to give a shout out to my boy Dan Danilo Borovic.
Please.
Dan is like longtime friend, longtime training partner. He always like really inspired me with like blue belt days, with just like mindset, and just I don't know, he put me under his wing for sure. And I love him for to hell and back for that.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's awesome. Mentors and those people are so important in our life. I'm noticing a theme here in your life, and there's another aspect we didn't even really talk about, so we'll maybe save it for another podcast, but it applies. I think it's really relevant. Rohan's also a classic guitarist, and he's classically trained. He's probably virtuoso level. He's very good.
No, dude, not even close. Come on.
He's very talented. He's very, very talented. And it's just the theme I'm noticing is that you as a child could go to your room and isolate, and you had the work ethic to identify a song, pick it, and learn it. Then you applied that again to jiu-jitsu. You applied those things to baseball. You do it now to even just finding personal balance for your own mental health. You'll lock a door and you're like, so I'm just noticing these themes about yourself that it's just innately in you to maybe not hyper focus, but you dedicate. So when you say things like, you got to be all in, you got to have passion, that's all heart. I believe that you do that to everything you pick.
Yeah, but I'm very selective about the things that I pick.
For like, sure.
I love jiu-jitsu. I love baseball. Those are things that I would devote my entire career if I could. But I have to like curtail it and say like it's so hard for me to find hyper focus in things that just like don't resonate with me. And like I think that was my struggle with corporate America for so long. Sure. Is that until I put it into the perspective of, okay, this job is going to let me have an academy. And as soon as I put that dogma into my head, it was like pedal to the metal. Like,
Wow.
Freeing.
Yeah,
It unleashed a lot. Yeah.
Yeah. Wow, that's a great perspective. I won't keep you much longer. You already touched on this too, but man, it just like, I'm so glad you said it, because I feel so passionately. I love BJJ. I need it. I love the physicality, but the relationships I've fostered from it have changed my life. And you're one of those people in that circle.
You too, man. You too.
I hope so, because you mean a lot to me. And watching people like that you train with, you said something like an expression on their face. You learn somebody so well through struggle and adversity, right? And to watch them triumph and to see them be successful. And I got to see that last year with a lot of the students, through white belt on. So this really early, it's just such a beautiful time to see someone go from nothing to being really successful, like a Pan Am, for instance, so
For sure.
It's like a beautiful, beautiful process and evolution to just, I've been able to watch and the bonding that through that process. And you can experience these things with people. It transcends everything you would never talk to on the street. You would never. And now you are bonded for life. You walk by and if they have a BJJ shirt, you'd be like, yo, to a stranger.
Same cult.
Totally. And I wrestled for 20 years and I never had that. And that's not pejorative. It's not being negative toward wrestling. It's just, I feel like it's a little bit more intimate with BJJ because there's so much control that has to be in there. You have to have such a mastery of not hurt somebody.
Yeah, true.
True.
And you also have to be okay with potentially getting hurt,
Yep.
You're sacrificing your body to the gods of jiu-jitsu. And
that's true.
Jiu-jitsu, I mean, you're saying it's okay for your training partners to do what they need to do to your body to get better and vice versa.
Yes.
There's that symbiotic relationship there too.
For sure. Man, I've appreciated every second of this, Rohan.
Me too, man.
I really want to do it again. Do you, for anybody who wants to reach out to you just for House of Dogs, get information about privates, how can they get a hold of you?
Oh, please message me on Instagram, Riders of Rohan BJJ or House of Dogs BJJ. And yeah, I'll love to chat.
Awesome. Thank you again. That's Truestory, John Gibson, Rohan Patel. Thanks again, Rohan.
Thank you, John. Much love, brother.
See you, buddy.
See you.